Three Things Thursday. It's officially a thing. It's the podcast daily. It's Jeremy Birmingham and Austin Ward. We're back again with, you guessed it, three things. I think, Birm, we'll get a little different twist on it this week. Something that you loved in the Ohio State opener against Akron. Something that maybe you'd like to see something a little bit different. And something that you're overreacting to. What do you think about those three things?
I like those three things. I think that's fair. I think that when a game happens like Saturdays against Akron, with a game like this against Western Michigan on deck, like I do think that we have a tendency to maybe overreact to things. And sometimes that's just driven by the ecosystem of being in the Ohio State world, because everything feels like it's 4th and 1 all the time. And maybe that's not necessarily needed when it comes to a 46-point home win with 80% of your team being new starters, so or on offense anyway. So let's start with things I loved. I loved Chip Kelly being asked about the play calling on Tuesday when he was at his press conference, because Ryan Day kept saying on Saturday how much he thought the game plan was good and how much he really liked what Chip Kelly did. And I like that Chip Kelly said, no, I didn't like it. And that makes me happy because I know what Ryan Day was saying when he talked about Chip Kelly's game plan and the game calling on Saturday after the game, which was things weren't working all of the time in the first half against Akron, and the Buckeyes didn't abandon the run. They didn't get panicked. They just decided to keep hammering away at the rock until it broke. And so I like that. But I also like that Chip Kelly was pretty critical. And again, I did have a moment with Chip in the hallway of the Woody after he finished his presser just to ask. And the amount of depth that he goes into his answers is really something that I really appreciate about him. But he was so clear that they were the reason they didn't score 70 points on Saturday. And you've said it a few times. I think it was at Weekend Kickoff, and you said it on other podcast dailies, but it's hard to get to 70 points in this new era of football because of the way the clock is, because of everything else. And to do that, you're going to need to score those first three touches you have as an offense. And Ohio State should not ever be stopped by Akron or Western Michigans of the world. They just should not. And if they are, I think it's important to recognize that it's probably a result of what Ohio State did and not what the defense did. And that's not to disparage anybody or to put down what Joe Moorhead's team did, because they had 9 months to prepare for Ohio State and brought some different looks and things that Ohio State wasn't expecting. But the talent gap is so wide that Ohio State should never be stopped in 3 straight series and to start a game against a team like that. So I really think that bodes well for this weekend, because I expect that we will see Chip Kelly be much more aggressive this Saturday against Western Michigan. And I think that the Ohio State players understand that they were put in position to make big plays on Saturday and just didn't execute.
Yeah, I think that that's an honest evaluation from Chip Kelly. And I also don't think that it is a complete evaluation, because part of something that I wanted to get to with him and Ryan Day both is like, not the cliche question of, oh, well, are you just keeping some things up your sleeve? Like, did you want to be intentionally vanilla? Because I don't think that that's what the goal was for Ohio State or for Chip Kelly with his play calling debut at Ohio State. But you don't throw everything at the wall or everything at, as you said, dozens of new players on offense and defense out there. But we're talking about Chip Kelly specifically. Like, you don't want to have the entire playbook installed and necessarily dial up everything from every direction in week one. So I don't know that that's the complete picture from Chip Kelly. Ryan Day is probably going to be more fair and even-handed with that. And was like, they got through the game. They did a bunch of things that they wanted to, but they can still build on that. They don't have to be the undestructible, every answer for everything that can be thrown at them offense by week one. And they weren't, but I also don't know why that would be held against anybody. Chip Kelly can be not satisfied with his performance and want to do better, and that can be good. But I don't think it has to be that we sit there and are concerned about it. I don't know that that has to be the approach either.
Yeah.
But
no, I think both those things can and are true for sure. 100%.
Okay.
But
yeah,
it's Akron. You should score 70 points.
You did say that you were going to freak out if they didn't score 60 in the opener.
Yeah, and I was close to it, honestly, because the first half, when you're up 17-3, you feel like, hey, that's not good enough. And again, as I said on Snap Judgments on Saturday after the game, when you're trying to judge everything by the standard of, is this performance good enough to win a national championship, which is the way that I'm viewing every game this season, and I'm trying to walk a fine line between the being negative and being understanding of the moment and understanding of what Ohio State has in front of them for this season. So there is a balance that needs to be struck there. So you win by 46. There was no moment in the game where it felt like you weren't doing what you wanted. And again, I think that's the important thing. I don't think Akron stopped Ohio State. So the Buckeyes tripping over their own feet at times in the first half is what's frustrating, because that shouldn't happen. But Chip Kelly brought up the cliche, and you just brought it up, the improvement from week 1 to week 2. I think some of the times that's come because you're really just not used to, even no matter how much we want to talk about the MAC or how Ohio State should be the more physical team, you still haven't been hit by anybody for 10 months at that point. And for a lot of these guys, haven't been hit by people in 2 years, the guys that are playing. So once you start playing the game and you're actually out there and it's physical, like, I think there is a moment of shell shock to be like, okay, welcome back to real football. And I think that's part of the reason why that jump happens between week 1 and week 2. Part of it is obviously just getting out there and getting some chemistry and understanding execution in the stadium. So I'm not worried about it at all for the offense. I haven't, I watched Kings of the North, this week, and I've watched Bill Landis talking. Bill, remember, I think it's a good time to talk about Bill since he's not on this episode of the Daily. He was talking about Ohio State leading the country in rushing and 30 rushing touchdowns for Quinshon Judkins. And he's walking that back a little bit already. If you noticed on Sunday's Sunday feedback show, I'm not walking back what I think about Will Howard potentially winning the Heisman. I think he's going to only get better from here. I'm not walking back Jeremiah Smith being a Heisman finalist based on what we saw on Sunday. Like, I think there's a world of potential. So I'm trying to just thread that needle between being overly critical of a team that won by 46 points, but also understanding that was not a good enough performance to win a national championship. But you don't win a national championship in week 1, so that's okay.
Good. I'm glad you added that caveat on to the end, because you cannot win a national championship in week 1, and you can't even really lose one in week 2, because even Florida State could turn around and find itself back in the playoff picture in this new era. There's going to have to be.
But they might have lost theirs in week 1 and 2, though. So
it's possible, but it's not impossible. They could win every game from here on out and win the ACC and go back to the playoff. Like, I do.
Sure.
I think there's got to be a recalibration for expectations. And I think I can already hear the yelling in the comments that say that's not the standard for Ohio State, and they're going to be different than Florida State. And I get it. But look, winning by 46 against Akron is not going to have anything to do with the college football playoff. Like, I know that we're going to break down every game. That's what we do here. We talk about Ohio State football 360 days a year. I think we took off 5 days, and sometimes we don't have weekends where we do shows. But like, we are going to be hyper focused on what is good and bad, indifferent, everything. We always talk about it. I don't think that we've ever ignored something that could be a problem that hurts Ohio State down the road, and we can definitely continue to do that. And we have talked about the offensive line, I think, on every show so far this week. But you have to let the process play out in some way and let the season go, because one loss or one bad performance, which Ohio State, I don't think they had a bad performance. They may have had a half that wasn't executed to the best of their ability, but they got to play another one and they won that game comfortably. And they're going to look better. I expect they're going to look better on Saturday against Western Michigan. And then in a month's time, they're going to look very different in every way. So I'm trying to be more patient with that. I tried to do that last year, and I think that I did an okay job with that. But then there were things that were going sideways that, like, maybe I should have given more credence to in real time. And I don't know the perfect solution for that, but I'm skipping ahead to like the things that I'm not really in love with, which is like, I think expecting perfection is not realistic for week one. And I
I
want,
love it. So let me get this straight. My thing that I liked is the thing that you don't like.
isn't that how it almost always is with us? We're like oil and water, man. Or
Yeah.
is that
So because what I like is that Chip Kelly's expecting perfection, and you don't like that Chip Kelly's expecting perfection. Is that where we're at here?
But I don't know. No, that's not what I mean. Like I don't think that Chip Kelly expected them to play perfect. He's been coaching for a long time. I think I like
I think there's a difference between understanding if you don't hit perfect and expecting or accepting less than perfect. You know what I mean? I think there's a difference there. Like understanding why you may not reach it, but still making sure that that's the goal, and then therefore less than thrilled if you don't accomplish it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that he is going to just accept that from week one and be like, well, that's good enough. They beat Akron by 46 and they had success in the second half. Like, I don't think that that's it. And I do think that within the Woody, there is certainly going to be a strong push, to be more physical. And maybe that's as simple as having Donovan Jackson back. I don't know. I don't think so. I think because Austin Sareveld graded out pretty well based on PFF, which again is grains of salt. But like, I don't know that that's the immediate fix for what happened or can explain what happened on Saturday. Is just that Donovan Jackson wasn't out there. Maybe it is because he's got a stabilizing veteran presence and he's a really athletic, strong blocker, and the run game would be way better. Like, I don't know. It's sort of in that.
Yeah. And I think it's important though. Like, this isn't just an offensive line conversation. Like, this was running backs picking up the wrong blocker. This is tight ends going to the wrong guy. It's wide receivers not blocking on the edge. Like, and again, Bill's not here, so we don't have to. We can talk about the offensive line and get away with it, but it's not obviously just about that, right? So it's not all that. It's the whole picture, and I think that's where you should reasonably expect a major jump from week 1 to week 2. Like, it seems unlikely that every position group will be that confused again when it comes to the first quarter and a half.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just on the glass half full wagon for this game because, like, there were 1.5 defensive drives to start the game where that they didn't look like the 100% efficient silver bullets best defense in America, but they adjust quickly. I think it's figuring out what the actual standard and expectation is. Like, I didn't think that I thought they were going to win the game 56-0. So I was off on that. I didn't think that Ohio State was going to give up any defensive points, but that's not really how the game of football works. And the MAC is not an FCS opponent either. So, like, I think I guess I'm just confused how this week has turned into, and I can't speak for everyone. There's plenty of people who are happy with the performance, who saw them adjust and get better throughout the game. But I think, like, when I'm thinking back in the game and the way we left on Saturday, I know that there are things that they could get better. I didn't leave thinking that they were things that they couldn't get better or that they wouldn't get better or that couldn't be addressed or fixed or improved upon. And I just have felt like the last couple of days, and even at times with some of the stuff that you're talking about there offensively, like, I don't know why there is a rush to paint that performance as negative. Like, it was way better than it gets credit for, in my opinion. And if I'm wrong about that in a month's time, I'm sure we'll find out and we'll replay this clip and I will feel very stupid. But I don't see how that's going to happen. Like, I'm just baffled.
I think you're right. I believe that there's a problem that if you say, and we'll just use you and I as the examples here, because I don't think that I'm necessarily being negative, because I'm trying really hard to thread that needle. Like, they're going to get better. I know that, but that still wasn't good enough on Saturday. So, like, the question is, or the problem is, as I see it, if you go on message boards, if you look at the live stream on Tuesday, the comments, there is a inability for people to have nuance in these conversations, and it's either all good or it's all bad. And I don't think you're saying it's all good, and I'm certainly not saying it's all bad. So like, there is a part where you say it's not good enough, but it was fine, and they'll get better, and it was actually not bad. It was just not. It wasn't bad. Like I said it on like, I think it was Monday's show, like, or Tuesdays, when I rewatched Will Howard's game. My opinion changed considerably from seeing it on the field to seeing it on TV. Like I was, it's always difficult being on the field trying to watch and like take brain notes, but like I didn't think he looked quite as in control of the game on the field on Saturday as it did when I watched it on TV. Like, he was way better. The offensive line, like, if you talk to Bill about it, like, he'll tell you the offensive line was way better on second watch and on film than it looked in person. Some of it is Quinshon Judkins not taking the right angle. Some of it is Quinshon Judkins, running a guy over at 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage instead of 2 yards in front of the line of scrimmage. Like, it's just a matter of degrees to get to where you want to be when you're a team of this talent and when you win by 46 points. So it's not like it's a situation where they were struggling to do whatever they wanted or that they were hurting in any way. It's just when Ryan Day and the Ohio State program has invited a ton of pressure on their shoulders for this season. And they have not shied away from it. To their credit, they have been like, hey, we understand what is at stake here. Let's bring it all on us. But when you do that and you come out and you don't put Akron to sleep in the first half, I think people are going to be like, whoa, that's kind of weird, because it's by no fault of their own in many cases. Like, the conversation about Ohio State's roster is not something they've wanted to have, but they've also made it a point to say over and over, this team's a national championship or bust mentality. So if you do that, then you can't. To be clear, it's not like the guys on the team are going, hey, take it easy on us. They understand what the expectation is. So it's just a little different, I think, than I would have anticipated from all of the talk heading into the season. So whatever. So that was my thing. I loved was that Chip Kelly wanted more.
Good.
What were the other categories? Because I feel like we got way off track here.
Yeah. Something that you didn't really love as much was number 2.
Okay. You already used yours then, right?
And I used mine up. So I'm going to go back to feel good stuff, which I want to see more Kaden Curry. Now, I don't know how that's going to work exactly. I was going back through, and as first Buck IQ of the year, we were focusing on Lathan Ransom, but the forced fumble came from Kaden Curry, and I just couldn't stop watching the second effort from that play. Deep pass rush, quarterback steps up, Kaden Curry runs that 10 more yards back down the field, dislodges the football for the forced fumble. Lathan Ransom takes it back for a score. It's always the extra effort with Kaden Curry. You've been talking about him for 3 years and his motor, his athleticism, his work ethic. It's all been true. We just get it in such concentrated doses. So I don't know the answer to this part, which is like, can Kaden Curry go 1,000 miles an hour because he only played 16 snaps on Saturday? I feel like he could do more. But then the question is, and we have this a lot, well, how many does he need if that has to come at the expense of JT Tuimoloau or Jack Sawyer's reps or Mitchell Melton or Kenyatta Jackson, who both also did good things in this game? So, like, maybe they are actually going to get back to that 2017 level where there's no drop off and you can play multiple guys and it's not an issue. That is, to reiterate, where I found the rotation was lacking was because there was a belief that they had 4 first-round NFL draft picks in 2021, and they did not. And they tried to keep doing that over and over, and that wasn't going to be successful. Maybe they're getting closer to that point, because I like watching Kaden Curry play football. In fact, I love it. That was supposed to be the name of that segment. I love watching him play defensive end for Ohio State, and I don't know the best way for him to do it more because those two guys are so good at the top, but if it's just for 16 plays, then I'm going to enjoy watching those.
Yeah, like I said, by my count, Ohio State played 16 defensive linemen on Saturday against Akron, which is pretty insane. I'm not sure I can recall a game where they've played that many. I love that you saw the rotation be varied. It wasn't just, okay, Jack and JT come out, in come Kenyatta and Kaden. You were seeing multiple form alignments. You were seeing Jack move inside. You were doing other stuff. So the defensive line play on Saturday was great. And Kaden Curry at 16 snaps, like, I don't know. I don't know if he needs more. If the full unit is playing that way, because as you said, maybe you're getting 100 miles an hour out of him for those 16 to 18 snaps, and if you go up to 25, 30, that is the differentiator for him. So like if you put him out there against a 6'7", 300-pound offensive tackle 30 times a game, I don't know that he's going to be as effective in reps 25 through 30 as he would be 1 through 15, because he's going to wear down. So I'm interested to see how they do that this weekend. I would like to. I'm going to nitpick here, but JT Tuimoloau was absolutely eating on Saturday, and there's a ton of highlights about Jack Sawyer after the game and the punishment that he gave Ben Finley. But like, JT played lights out in the times he was out there, and I felt like he was on the field for like 10 snaps. So I would like to see when you see a guy like getting into that rhythm. Like, I want that guy to continue to be out there. So, but that's obviously nitpicky. The defensive line played great.
Yeah, they did. It was fun to watch. I think they're.
What are we on? What things I didn't love?
Yeah, I think you crammed all of them into the first segment.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't want to talk about the fans because people get mad at me, but I didn't love that people left at halftime in a 17-3 game in the season opener that you've been waiting 9 months for, and a team that you believe is going to win a national championship. That was confusing to me. So hopefully Saturday night against Western Michigan is better, because the weather is going to be pretty perfect for football. And this, I understand Saturday was pretty sweltering out there in the stadium, but what else did I love?
Everyone loves primetime games, Berm. So even if it's Western Michigan, you got to make the most of it. Go tailgate all day. It's going to be a perfect day for it.
Yeah. What else didn't I love? I didn't love. I got one. I got one though. It's a good one.
Okay.
This one is directly for you. I believe it was a total of like 94 combined snaps for the tight ends on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one target in the passing game to them. Yeah. And that was to Will Kazmarek, and a ball that was slightly overthrown. That can't happen. Like, the Ohio State offense, I hope, and I'm going to say this, and it's going to be stupid because obviously Jeremiah Smith is going to have like an incredible career, and you're going to rely on him as a security blanket all the time. But I hope that Ohio State can develop other passing targets that are not going to be to the wide receivers.
Yeah, that's a good point, because there wasn't a ton of, I don't know, diversity in the targets for Ohio State on Saturday. That maybe they don't need to, but we did talk a lot throughout training camp about playing receivers 4, 5, 6, getting Brandon Ennis involved, whether Bryson Rogers was going to play more, Kojo Antwi having, strong performances in camp, without even talking about, because I think it would just be assumed that Will Kazmarek, G. Scott, or Jelani Thurman could be involved in some capacity, even if it's 20 catches over the course of the year for each of them, put in that ballpark. So I do think that that's something that would be encouraging to see more of in week 2. Can they win without it? Maybe they can. And Ohio State has, even when they had the Luke Farrell and Jeremy Ruckert combination, it was like an X factor. You unveiled it for the Clemson game in the Sugar Bowl, and it's like they weren't expecting it, but it was there all along. They saved it up for the big moments. Like, that would be fine. I think you could live in that world, but maybe it would make it easier for the running game or for Jeremiah Smith if they can start moving around the coverage a little bit. They did attack the middle of the field a fair amount, actually more than I remembered when I was looking at the passing chart, but it wasn't with the tight ends.
Yeah, and I think that it would have been a nice, for a guy like Jelani Thurman, who played the most snaps of the tight ends on Saturday, which is a really great sign for Ohio State, who we have talked about a lot about the ability to stay engaged and the maturity and that sort of stuff. I think if Ohio State sees him out there, he's playing 29 good reps, like he's doing all the dirty work, I want to see that be rewarded in the game with a touchdown. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see them push the ball to the tight ends. That's all.
Okay.
That's not really it's not a complaint. It's just interesting. Only one target out of 94 some snaps.
Maybe because Will Howard was worried that everyone was talking about in August how he loved throwing the tight ends and he wanted to break tendency. Maybe that was it.
Maybe.
What's something that you yourself are overreacting to from week one?
Probably Quinshon Judkins' output on Saturday. Like I there was so much talk about him in the offseason, and maybe it's NCAA 25's fault. I don't know, making him be basically unstoppable. I have been a proponent and a fan of Trayon Henderson's for a while. That's not a surprise or a secret. I think when he's healthy, he is a game breaker, difference maker, whatever other hyphenated acre term you want to use. Like, I love Trayon as a player. But I would have thought that we would have seen Quinshon be more dynamic. And I maybe didn't understand that they're, even though Chip Kelly on Tuesday said that you could play them in similar roles and they're similar backs, I don't think that they are that similar as far as what they do best. And maybe it's just going to take a minute for this offensive line to open up the holes that Quinshon needs for him to do what he does best, because he might be more of a sledgehammer, a guy that, by the 11th or 12th carry is starting to break down a defense, as opposed to what Trayon does, where he hits you on the first one and then it's 7-0. So I think that's probably the one area I think I've been maybe a little critical of Quinshon's performance based on what I saw, but it's not because I don't think he's going to be great. I just maybe had a different expectation.
That's fair. Mine is more big picture for the entirety of the season. And if there are folks out there who want to put a ton of stock into week one, and I won't blame anyone if they do, because I'm about to. But my point was that Ohio State's week one was better than some other teams, namely Oregon, secondarily Michigan, and thirdly, in a positive way, which I can't believe I'm going to say this, Penn State. So those are the three biggest games on Ohio State's schedule. I came into the year knowing full well that the game is mandatory and a must, but that Oregon represented the toughest challenge for Ohio State this year. I'm going to overreact and now say that Penn State's win against West Virginia, whoever they
Western Michigan, Virginia.
I got Western Michigan on the brain. West Virginia was one of the more impressive performances of the season. I don't really believe that James Franklin can continue that over the course of the season, but I, as of now, overreact to week one. Now think that the trip to Happy Valley will represent the toughest game on Ohio State's schedule.
I think for James Franklin, it all depends on how much he's willing to stay out of his new offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki's way. If he lets that guy be the guy in charge of the offense and doesn't eventually override things or put in his own input and try to make it about James Franklin, I think I agree. But I wanted to go back and tell you that I think I'm more alert now for that Iowa game on October 5th that you kept talking about in August as a sleeper pick for one to really watch. And now I'm a little bit more on alert for that, because while their offense still struggled pretty hard in the first half against directional Illinois, and not even like the good directional Illinois, like it was like subterranean Illinois, they put up 34 points in the second half, which, was basically what Ohio State did on Saturday against Akron. Sure, Akron, I think, would beat whatever Illinois they played. So, but it was an improvement. And obviously their defense is so fundamentally sound and so stout all the time that I think maybe their performance combined with the percolating Ohio State first half performance worries in my head make that game maybe more interesting than I thought heading into week two.
Wow. Clearly, we've gone too far on this show if you are agreeing with me at the end. But hey, we've come together and found some things, some common ground on Three Things Thursday. It's a great place to end it. Sorry for some of the weirdness in there. That went some directions that I wasn't anticipating.
Thread the needle, baby. Like, let's thread the needle. And that's all. It's fair to be critical, but it's also critical to be fair. Damn.
Wow. Very well said. That man is Berm. I am Austin. Thanks for joining us for the Thursday episode of the Podcast Daily. Freaky Friday is just one day away. And then after that, it's Ohio State and Western Michigan in prime time at the Horseshoe. We'll talk to you later.